Hello and welcome to this tutorial on PhotoStatistica. This session is focused on filters. Check out our other tutorials that cover importing data and charts in more detail to help you get the most out of PhotoStatistica. Today we're going to look at filter conditions, matching modes, auto calculation, global and local filters, and finally filter favorites. Let's get stuck in. Now for today's tutorial I've already imported just over 40,000 images. Go to our importing tutorial if you want to know more about how you can import images and the different options available to you. I'm going to hide that pane away now, just gives a bit more room just by clicking the hide show button here. And I'm also going to be flicking around between different chart types because it'll help us see what's going on. Again, another tutorial on those if you want to understand those in more detail. Let's focus on chart filters. So I'm showing ISO values here for our data, and you can see there's quite a lot of individual values here, so you can see them going up quite high. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do just to cut this down a bit is just to show you them grouped. So this gives us a slightly more manageable set that we can see on our screen. First of all, I'm going to look at just what I call a filter that just applies to this chart. So on the right here, you'll see it says chart filter. It's disabled at the moment. Let's enable that and let's start adding some conditions on. So the first condition I'm going to show you today is just a simple one where in this data here, we've got some images where no EXIF data for ISO was recorded. So it's recorded, no value recorded here. We want to get that out of this analysis, although it's a little bit, it's really corrupting the other stuff we want to see. So I'm going to go and add new filter condition, and here you can choose quite an extensive set of different EXIF and metadata fields that you can filter on. So I'm going to go on ISO, and I'm going to go and choose was recorded. So I only want to include photos where the ISO value was recorded. Click that, and you can see that that bar has immediately disappeared. Now we've got that condition active, let's just show you just a few of the other small controls you have. You have got the ability to disable that particular condition here by clicking its little check mark here, and you can see therefore it's re-included those values here. And you have the overall filter of it. Let me just re-enable that. You've also got the ability here to switch the whole filter on or off. Maybe we'll show you this later on. We've got more than one condition in here, but this will disable the whole filter in one go. So you can sort of see it on or off. So on that note, let's add a few more conditions. Let's say that we wanted just to narrow our analysis down to between 100 and 800 ISO. So how might we do that? So let's add another condition on ISO, and let's say that I want it to be greater than or equal to 100. You can see it's change that, and add a next condition where the ISO is less than or equal to, what do we say, 800. Let's do 800 there. Okay, and therefore you can now see that we've really reduced that range down, and I can then switch that whole filter on or off. So that's with it off, and that's with it on. So with that done, I can now maybe just look at individual ISO values because I'm not going to overwhelm my chart, and there you can see those individual ISO values going up there to the right. Obviously, the prime one that I seem to use is 160 a lot. Coming back over here to the chart filter, you can combine any set of conditions that you want here. So we could say, look, I'm only interested where let's take for example, the year was greater than, what should we put in here, 2014. And you'll see the numbers change slightly again. It always shows you at the bottom here how many images this is pulling out. So we've got a total of 40,000 images that we started with. We're now down to 7,000. And this export icon here on the right, you can just export those images to a CSV file as well. So it really enables you to focus down on maybe what you want to export as well as chart as well. Let's look at what I've been calling matching modes. So at the moment we've got a match here that says match all. What this means is that every photo must match all of these conditions for it to be included in this analysis. Let's do an example though where maybe we want only ISO 160, and ISO 320. Let's see how we would do that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to reset this filter. So I'm going to hit this button here. It's going to reset this. And I'm going to say, I'm going to change my matching mode to match any. I'm going to say I want it where the ISO is equal to 160. So we've just got that bar. I'm going to do another one where the ISO value is equal to 320. So just to explain again in detail, what this, when you're in this matching mode any, means that for a photo to be included in the analysis, it has to either have an ISO of 160 or an ISO of 320, and there it will come in. And actually something I forgot to mention earlier on, you can actually see this up here. PhotoStatistica has written out the query of what it is showing. So you can see it says ISO equals 160 or ISO equals 320. I want to just look at just a couple of other special cases in here, which can be quite interesting. When you choose something like, for example, program mode, exposure program, exposure program, and you get a reduced set of options here because this isn't like a scalar value, there's only a finite set of options. So we can say equals, and you'll see here it will have all the different EXIF standard values in here. So we say, well, I want something where it is manual or aperture priority maybe. I think I've got quite a few of those, and you can see this is now limiting to images with just aperture priority, showing ISO, but only goes on aperture priority. Let's get rid of that. One other condition that can be quite useful is one called EXIF data. Now, PhotoStatistica scans over and extracts about 30 EXIF fields, but not all of them. Otherwise, it would get a bit overwhelming for the people that want to use it for core analysis. But you do have a way to extract EXIF data for a very specific set of images, just based on whether a piece of text appeared in some EXIF data. So what you can say is the EXIF data contains, now I'm actually going to type, the word Fuji in here. Now, we could have just done a filter that says, does camera make equals Fuji, which is fine. But just as a point of an example, I have just said, look, any photograph where the EXIF data contains the word Fuji, pull it out. Particularly a more useful example is maybe you've got a serial number of a camera which you know is being recorded in the EXIF data. You could use that in there as well, something like that. Now, so far, although we've got 40,000 images in here, it's been quite quick to update. I'm on a reasonably powerful machine here. It's a 2018 MacBook Pro. You might either have maybe just a slightly less capable machine, or maybe you've got a very large database of images, maybe 300,000 images. And it might be a little bit frustrating that the system recalculates every time you change a filter on here when you want to add many in one go. In which case, if you come down here and switch auto off, now this will not recalculate automatically. So if I now go here and remove this condition, you'll notice this hasn't changed, but the recalculate button has lit up here, a little sort of recycle sign there. Let's just add in where we had ISO was greater than 100, and we'll do ISO is less than 400, and we'll also say where aperture was recorded. And now I hit this button here, and it'll apply that filter in one go. So that just gives you a bit more control if you've got very large data sets and you don't want to be waiting every time you enter in one of those variables. Next, let's look at global and local filters. What we've put on here at the moment is a filter that only applies to this chart. Okay, so let me just, what I'm going to do to demonstrate this. Now, I'll leave that as it is. Let me add a new chart. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to add a new pie chart to make it very clear. And you can see this has got all the ISO values in it. It is different to this one over here, where it's been restricted in values. Sorry, maybe it's easier for you to see the comparison. Let me just put them both as pie charts. So in this one here, we've limited ourselves to ISO grouped. There we go. So this one is limited ourselves to between 100 and 400, and only where the aperture was recorded. And over here, it's got all of them, 40,000 images in here. But there might be something where you want a filter applied to all the data across all your charts. And that is where the global filter comes in. So, for example, over here, I had said I want the aperture where the aperture was always recorded. But that might be something I want across all my analysis. I don't want to look at photographs where the aperture wasn't recorded. Well, we can add the global filter. So again, enable the global filter here. I'm going to put maybe that the aperture was recorded. I'm going to run that filter. I'm going to actually switch this back to auto for the purpose of this demo. And now when we go across to chart 2, you'll notice it is only looking at 15,000 images, not the 40,000 it was, because it's applying this filter. Once you've applied that filter, it's got exactly the same set of conditions and capabilities as the local, but it just applies to every single chart. You can hide it by clicking this and it's just out of the way, but be aware that when that is switched on, that filter is still in operation across all of your charts. Final thing to look at is filter favorites. There might be a set of filters that you often apply to different charts. Not always, but you don't have to keep having to recreate it all the time. So let's go back to here. Let's just take this off. Let's just say that this focusing on values between 1 and 400 ISO is something you do quite frequently. And what you can do is you can add it to a favorite. You click that and say add to favorites. Give it a name. So I'm going to say 100 to 400 ISO. Oops, I can type. Add that in. Now, let's go across to chart 2, and I want to apply this to this chart, so let me enable that chart there, and come down to my filter, and now you'll see it's added it to the menu. And I can then set this as the filter. So I'm going to set it on there, and there it appears and calculates straight away. Just one thing to be aware of, that if you've got some other conditions on here, let's just say that I had exposure mode was equal to manual, something like that. If I take this and then I reapply that, it's going to overwrite that whole filter and it's come off. You can undo it. I'm just going to press Ctrl Z now, and that comes back there. Also, you can clean up your favorites if you don't need them anymore, then you can remove them off that list. They are saved as part of your preferences, so if you've got different PhotoStatistica databases, you'll find those filter favorites are available on each one. Well, that's given you a good tour across filters today. If you've got any questions or ideas, please, we really love hearing them and help us make the product stronger as it goes forward. Remember, we've got those other detailed tutorials on importing data and the charts themselves. Take a look at those. And all that leaves me to say is I hope you enjoy your photography.